This podcast is brought to you by lillybadcock.com and the Confidence Academy, giving you the confidence to be who you truly are. This is the Confidence Academy podcast. My name is Lilli Badcock and I am a transformational confidence coach. And I'm here with a message for you. The anxiety and overwhelm you've been experiencing is not something to be feared or avoided. It's also not something that gets to define who you are as a person. No matter who you are, no matter what your story is, I know that you get to live a life of fulfillment and joy. It's my absolute pleasure to bring this podcast series to you in collaboration with some phenomenal people from all over the world who have walked the same path as you. Together, we will share our stories, our challenges, and our triumphs, with the intention of helping you to see that it's possible for you too. Anxiety may be something you live with, but it doesn't get to define who you are or how you live your life. So stand by for some powerful conversations, deep realizations, and the occasional F-bomb. So get those headphones in if you're around sensitive ears, and stand by. This is going to be fun. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. This week I'm bringing you a conversation with the amazing Taniya Hussain. Taniya is a transformational coach from London in the UK who developed something called Muslim Alchemy to help others upgrade their lives in the areas of health, marriage, money, parenting, alongside many others. Taniya shares her own experience of having a dark night of the soul, which you will actually learn ended up being many nights and not just one. Taniya now uses her own experiences to help others create epic transformation in their own life, and she's going to be explaining how she does that right here in this episode. Please do come and join us over in the Confidence Academy Facebook group so we can continue the conversation there. And of course, if you know anyone who might benefit from this episode, please feel free to share it with them too. Finally, you can join my mailing list by clicking the link in the show notes to make sure you never miss another episode. Okay, that's all for now. Stand by for Taniya. Hi everybody, welcome back to the podcast. It's your host Lilli Badcock, and today I am joined by a fellow Brit, Taniya Hussain, who is just up the road in London. I mean, it's like 2 hours up the road, but still, it's pretty local. Taniya, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lilli, for having me. It feels lovely to kind of, chat to other Brit coaches. Yeah, I love that. I love it. Yeah.
It's exciting.
I love everybody outside of UK, but yeah, it feels with lockdown, it feels like I've got a neighbour nearby.
I think that's it, isn't it? I think that's the thing. I mean, I absolutely love that through this show I get to speak to people all over the world, and it always blows my mind when I've spoken to somebody that's like in Australia or something like that. I'm like, how is that even possible? I love it. But I do always get a little bit excited when I'm like, oh my God, like I could literally shout from my house. I mean, you wouldn't hear it. It's 2 hours up the road, but it's a nice idea. It's a nice thought. But welcome to the show. So for everybody listening, Taniya is a transformational coach. She has a business called Taniya Hussain Coaching and Consultancy Services. And we're just going to have an awesome conversation, as we always do. I'm very excited to hear about this dark night of the soul that you mentioned in your application. So when people apply to be on the show, they just give me some background as to, their story and what they'd like to share. And this feels like quite an epic dark night of the soul. So let's start there. Just starting with explaining for anyone that doesn't know what a dark night of the soul is. Just let's start with that. Let everybody know what we're talking about here.
I actually thought a dark night of the soul is like one night. Whenever I heard the term, I thought it was like one night. In my experience, it was 7 months. It was 7 months of hell. And it led to the biggest. I've had other massive transformations since then, but that was the biggest ever. And the others have been following on from that.
Yeah, I love that you've gone there already, because I think we forget that often when we're in a time of struggle or deep pain, it usually does end up being that epic time of transformation that's not always pretty and it's not always what we expect, but
we do always come through it in some way, shape, or form. And that's not to take away from the pain we might be feeling in the moment, but more to hopefully give comfort to anyone who's listening that usually epic transformation is painful, because we're shedding what felt comfortable and we're being invited to step into something else. And often we're being invited to look at elements of ourselves and experiences that we may have continually had that we may not want to have anymore, and that is not comfortable. So I would love for you to tell your story. Tell us all about that 7-month period that you experienced. You said it was 7 months of hell. So please tell us your story, because I just know that by sharing that, it's going to be so transformational. Even just sharing that story could be transformational for somebody listening. So please tell us your experience.
I mean, basically, it started in August 2017. I remember it very clearly. I was in Karachi. I'm Pakistani. I was born in Pakistan. I married a Pakistani guy. And I was in Karachi visiting his family. My family live in London. His family still live in Karachi. And I was visiting his family. I was on holiday with 2 of my 3 sons and my husband on a family visit, I'd say, visiting his family. And it was not the usual, I was not in my usual routine. I didn't have to worry about the school run and getting up. I'm a social worker by profession. I didn't have the worries of my social work job. I was being a lady of leisure, really, because in Karachi you have servants. I didn't have to worry about the cooking, and so I had like a lot of time on my hands. And I found I was not. Yeah, let me. Yeah, this was me. I have to go back to really time travel now. And I remember going to the family visit before I flew. I remember saying to myself, Tanya, you've got to like be different. You've got to kind of not be yourself. You can't really say what you want to say, and because this is your husband's family. And I remember when I arrived there, I was like, I'm just going to be myself. I'm just going to say what I want to say. I'm not going to modulate what I'm feeling and saying. And first of all, I think I said that to myself. Forget about who they is. It was like, I'm going to say what I want to say to myself, like 100% truth to myself. No more bullshitting, no more hiding from the truth. And then I started like saying it to my husband, what exactly I was thinking, what exactly I was feeling. And he was like really shocked, because I'd never really been like this, like, like saying what exactly is on my mind. And at the same time, I love Rumi, Jalaluddin Rumi, who's a Persian poet, a mystic. And I didn't take very much because, luggage and everything, but I took a couple of books to read, and one of them was his collection of poetry, very thin book, not the thicker ones. And I remember reading about, and that during this Karachi visit, we were just, doing the things that you do. You go out, you eat, you have a good time. You're going to restaurants, you're like going to people's houses, you're just like chilling, you're just relaxing. And yeah, while that was really good, I just found it really meaningless. It was like, and I read this, I mean, I wish I could, I need to find this poem, because I keep talking about it to people and I don't really give it the justice that poem deserves. But basically, this poem basically said that, we're born and we die, and we eat and we sleep and we go to the toilet, and that's our lives, and that's it. There's nothing else to our lives. There's no meaning, there's no purpose, there's no, and the treasures that we have, we don't treasure. I'm not giving any justice. Rumi is so much more beautiful than what I'm trying to express here. Sorry, Rumi. And it felt like, because he is like a friend for me, that kind of reached out from, traveled across time and just reached out to me. And all I remember, and I've never ever prayed this prayer. I've always been a very spiritual person. I've been studying Islam under a Muslim scholar since 1992. I met her in 1992. I've been doing lots of interfaith work. This is voluntarily. Most of my friends are rabbis and pastors and imams, and I've led prayers and everything. I've facilitated Quranic workshops, and but I've never ever prayed this prayer. And I prayed this prayer, I remember very clearly. Please, God, give me a purposeful life. I just want a purposeful life. Just give me a purposeful life. I don't flipping know what my purpose is. I know I always wanted to be a writer, a famous writer. I've been this social worker for 20 odd years, working, with the marginalized. I know, in that way I fulfill a purpose, but I feel like this is not just what you want me to do. I know you want me to do something bigger and greater, and I flipping don't know what that is. And I just started praying. I was praying really fervently, and it led to those particular conversations within me, and started to have those conversations with my husband. What it led to was me, and I think is very, very rampant on the internet. This is very much this very binary paradigm, which is, there are two groups of people. There's narcissists and there's empaths. And the narcissists are like the baddies, and the empaths are the goodies. And I kind of had succumbed to this a few years ago, and then I kind of like let it be. And I was like, no, this isn't really. There's more to it. And then I kind of was back into this, like, my husband's being this narcissist, and like he's not allowing me to be me, and no matter what I do, it's like, and I kind of just went down this very kind of extreme paradigm with him. And basically I didn't say it straight away. I was kind of just admitting it, what I felt was the truth, admitting that truth to myself, which wasn't actually a truth, but I'll come on to that later. And I just kind of started saying what exactly I kind of said. I said things like to him, oh, you treat me like I'm an emotional punch bag, and I'm tired of being treated like this, and you never loved me, and all this kind of stuff. And we came back, and September, it was September. I remember it was my youngest son's birthday. I decided I needed to like physically not, like separate from him, as in like did it within the house, went upstairs to my eldest son's bedroom. He was at university at the time. And I remember the following day, my husband's like, why, where did you go? Why are you not? And I was like, I've had enough. I don't know what I'm good. All I know is I can't do this anymore. I can't do this marriage the way it has been. I just can't do this. And kind of a few years ago, I'd done something similar. Like, I was really upset with him for a lot of different reasons. And kind of then I always used to like go back. So I've done this quite a few times in my life, and I always go back. But this time I was like, I am not going back. Things need to change. I'm not willing to be, like taken for granted anymore, or I'm not willing to. All I know is I need to raise my standards. I mean, I need to raise my standards within myself. I just want a different kind of marriage. I don't know what that marriage is, but I just can't do this. And I started having some conversations with him, and he just didn't get it. It was like, what? Oh, I haven't done anything. What do you mean? And because I was this internet paradigm, this narcissist empath was very much kind of like possessing me. I also was kind of really like scared. I was really scared that, what these people call gaslighting is going to happen, and God knows what else. And there were sometimes I had the conversations, and then sometimes I didn't have the conversations. And I kind of locked myself in my son's bedroom in the evenings. Still carried on with my social work job. I still, was doing, you know, some of the cooking and the cleaning and stuff like that. And over time, my husband started like cooking for himself. He started doing his own washing. The conversations like became less. There was a lot of tense atmosphere, obviously within the household. But then I also had like never had it in all my life, like the luxury of time of doing whatever I wanted to do in the evenings. Could like just do what I wanted to do. And I found myself, that's where I found the online coaching industry, which I didn't really know kind of existed. You're kind of probably thinking, where was I living? But yeah, this is, you know, this was me back in 2017. And obviously on some stage I must have subscribed to a coach's email, you know, list. And, you know, she was emailing me, and I saw this particular coach who's very much into this narcissist versus empath paradigm, said she's on a online summit for 22 coaches. You can have free access, and you can like have access to these 22 excellent coaches, or however many they were. And it started, I can't think it remember, it started in November. Anyway, October happened. October, and I was still, you know, like not refusing to kind of be with my husband, and just having very, very snippets of conversation when we had to, and it was to do with practical matters because we still got 3 kids and we run a house together. And he went away to the States to see his friends, and I remember I was so kind of into this, like, you know, he's this, he's this, he's this. I remember him just trying to call me on Messenger, and I just kind of, I went, oh my God, he's calling me. What do I do? And this is like my husband that I've been with like whatever 20 odd years. Like, why was I being like this little child? Obviously, at that time, I was just so obsessed with this paradigm. I, you know, just blanked him. He came back. And I remember when he was going, actually, he was saying, shall I get you any gifts from the US? And I said, I don't want anything. I don't want anything from you. And I was just behaving like this little girl, very hurt little girl, little princess. And he kind of just, again, couldn't quite understand it. He came back, and November was really interesting. My eldest son went and ran the marathon in Athens for charity. And my husband kind of thought, this is one way of trying to get Tanya back. He booked the flights, he booked the hotel, and like my eldest was obviously going with his university to the Athens, but we kind of went separately to kind of watch him. And, you know, he was like, you know, this is one way she's going to kind of come back to me. And I remember, no, I went and slept with the kids in the kids' room. And like, he was again still like, my God, she's like really adamant. This is like after a few months, she's usually back, you know, like after when she does this, this is now like, I need to like take this seriously. And I remember he was so attentive to me, really attentive in Athens. Like, what would you like, Tanya? What would you like to, where would you like to go? You know, like, you know, and I was like, just not having it. I was like, no, he's this narcissist, this whatever, and just looking at all the, and obviously in a marriage you have certain times that the person is takes you for granted or whatever happens. It's kind of, that's marriage, right? That's life. But I was like blanking out all the good experiences, the loving experiences that we had. And I was just, I was like, you know, like, and I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of like in this real afraid, like it's gonna go back to how it is. I'm gonna still carry on, you know, giving and giving, and he's gonna keep taking me for granted. And I feel like this is just like, this is not how I want to be. I want to be this woman in this really loving marriage that married somebody that treats me like a queen, and I treat him like a king, and I just feel like I'm nothing. And like, and I remember we came back, and he'd been so loving and attentive towards me in the whole trip, and I just blanked him on this journey back. On the flight back, he was sitting one row ahead of me, and I was like, I just want to sleep. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. All I know is I just don't want this. And November came, we came back, and I remember December was coming, and I knew that my eldest son was going to be back. He needed his room. where am I gonna sleep? And it happened that one of my colleagues was going away for a few weeks for a holiday, and she needed me to house sit. And I was like, wonderful, yeah, this is brilliant. And I, like, she was very sympathetic to my story. I didn't like blast him completely, but she was like, oh my God, that's so awful. Yeah, of course you can come and stay. And like, you can look after my fishes and feed my fishes. And I was like, yeah. And so I had like this other place to like go to, and it was very 10 minutes down the road from me. It wasn't as if it was like really far. And I kind of took the responsibility of feeding her fishes and everything. And so I had like this house to kind of just chill. And it was like the first time since I've like been married. When did I get married? 1995. And I had one son in 1996, and another son in 2001, and another son in 2007. Being a social worker and kind of just giving and giving and giving. Never really had any, and I think a lot of women can probably relate to this, never really gave permission to give myself some time for me without having to give to social work clients, or even when I had a private counselling practice, like never any time. It was like constantly just giving and giving and giving. And the few times that I gave to me, this is what I do. I write, I write short stories, I write poetry, I kind of very creative. And that was like my me time. That was me having fun, me playing, but those were few and far between. And then suddenly I had this, like access to a physical house. And I remember my husband saying, like, are you having an affair? Because I use this space and this time to get in touch with me, like to really kind of, I remember even every single like breakfast that I had by myself in my work friend's house, I used to kind of like just savor the coffee or the toast and like eat it really slowly. I kind of used to savor having a bubble bath. I had like this space. I used to like just kind of like really enjoy just hugging myself, and it felt like really weird, but it was like I felt like I was connecting to the woman in me. Like I'd never really done that before, in my own space, in my own time, in my own way. And I kind of just, it just sounds really like odd and weird, but it was really kind of like loving me for me. And when he said that, I was like, no, the only person that I'm having an affair with is myself. I said that to myself in my head. And he just couldn't get it. And then there were some other nights I literally didn't know if I was going to have a house over my head. My physical comfort. When coaches say get out of your comfort zone, I literally was out of my physical comfort zone. I didn't know which night I was sleeping at my friend's house. There were some nights I was sleeping at my mum's. She had a spare room, and I used to go with whatever I felt like going with. And at the same time, obviously, my husband's like, what's happening? What are you doing? You kind of, and trying to kind of like speak to me. And I just kind of was like, no, I just don't want to speak to you. And there were like a few arguments. It's like he just couldn't understand. And I'm like, no, I don't want to speak to you. And then December, that was December. And I remember New Year's Eve, 2017, we usually go to his uncle's house. And he even came up to me and he goes, oh, you coming? And I'm like, no, I'm going to have New Year's Eve at home. And he just like looked at me like, she's like, she's stubborn. This one's really being stubborn this time. and I just spent the New Year's Eve actually with my eldest son, who was going out. And I remember like, I really don't know what 2018 is going to bring. But all I know is I need to kind of go through this very dark, be in this place of darkness, which is kind of, and I remember my spiritual teacher saying to me, darkness is nothing to be afraid of, Tanya, she said. Darkness is like, can be a very nurturing place. It's like the womb. When you are born, you know, your soul comes into a womb, your mother's womb, which is a very dark place. You don't have a lot of light. So just kind of like see this darkness as a time to you nurturing yourself. And meanwhile, I was listening to these like top coaches in this online summit, and it was called Breaking Through Your Barriers by Dr. Janine Staples was the host, who's an American online coach. She's actually a professor, and you know, she's kind of, and there was all these like women, a few of them were men, and they kind of were talking about how they had broken through their personal barriers. Some of them had set up coaching businesses, some of them were authors, some of them were like, you know, top movie producers and stuff, and it felt like, my God, and there was part of me was thinking, I can see myself doing that, I mean, being a coach, and like, you know. And then there was another part of me was like, my God, they like kind of really, I can relate to their stories, and there was like so much inspiration and motivation, and I thought, my God, there's such a thing called online coaching. There's all these online coaches I didn't even know they existed. And maybe I kind of need an online coach, you know, because I've always wanted to set up my business, and I've always wanted to be this famous writer, but it's like my life just has got in my way, or I've let my life get in my way. And it got me to like think about hiring one of these coaches. And I remember December 26th, 2017, I booked what's called, I don't know what it was called, breakthrough session, strategy session with one of these online coaches. And I remember she said to me, Tanya, you've never really ever invested in yourself, like given yourself any time, any space to figure out what you want to do in your life. I said, no, I've never have. I've constantly just given to my kids, to my social work clients, to my husband. It's like, you know, just giving and giving and giving. I feel really, and she goes, well, why don't you invest in yourself? And then when she told me the price, I was like, what? I can't afford this. I didn't even know if I've got a roof over my head. But it was like something that she said that like said, no, I need to hire her. And I hired her, and thinking, I didn't even know where I was going to get the money from, but I hired her. And all my friends, because I wasn't speaking to my husband at the time, were saying, you're mad that she's charging this amount of money. It was, what was it? $697 a month for 3 coaching calls in the month, and 24-hour support, which now I know is not a bad deal at all, actually. But at the time it was like this is way more than, like, you know, I pay for my flipping mortgage, you know. This is crazy money. And all my friends were saying, like, you're mad. And I was like, but then I was like, there was something in my gut was like, no, you need to stick with her. You need to stick with her. You need to stick with her. And she kind of was doing the coaching calls on Zoom. I had never really heard of Zoom apart from this strategy session. And I was like, okay, all right. And you know, I started working with her in January. And what was weird is started working with her in January, and I can't remember, was it late December, early January? I got this inquiry, because I do like private counselling for people in the Muslim community. I got this private inquiry from somebody actually I don't know, but who actually knows me from the Muslim community, because I do a lot of voluntary work for them. And she was like, oh, by the way, you know, my best friend, her son hasn't slept for 2 years, and they're desperate, and we heard about you and your counseling, and can you kind of like, you know, meet up with him and like offer your services? And I was like, okay. But then I realized he lived all the way in East London and I live in Southwest London, and I used to use like a room. I didn't have access to that room anymore. And I was like, why don't we do this like on Zoom, online? And then she goes, okay, speak to my best friend who's going to be paying you, because it's her son. And so I spoke to the friend, And I knew that I could help him because I'm trauma trained. I've worked with top psychologists in this country, Dr. Liz Bailey, who's talked to me about trauma. Is all very much, you know, how you can kind of counsel somebody who's had severe trauma. So I knew I could help him. And his story was that he'd been physically abused by volunteering for his local mosque. And he couldn't sleep. As a result of this, he was 19 when I started working with him. Had happened between when he was 14 and 16 or something, and he couldn't like sleep, and he used to have nightmares about what happened. And I just basically said to the mum, like, I'm not going to offer you counselling. I'm actually going to offer you coaching, because this is about, we can look at the past, but we can also look at his goals for the future. And I really didn't know what I was doing, but they were like, yeah, fine. It's like, yeah, I mean, we trust you. We know you, we know your reputation. Yeah, fine. If you want to do sleep coaching. And she hired me for 6 months. She paid me, but I obviously worked with the son. And they hired me for 6 months. And by the third month, he was nightmare free. And I remember, because I work with involuntary clients as a social worker. Most of my clients come from the court, so they're kind of ordered to come to me, and I'm really good at what I do as a social worker. I'm able to get them to kind of look at, you know, really difficult stuff, but there's a lot of resistance because they come from the court. But with this person, I'm going to call him Momin. That's not his real name. Momin, kind of just because he was just like so wanting to do the work. It was like so easy to do. It just felt like this. I'm like, I'm getting paid for this, and he's paying me, and it's like this is like magic. This isn't work. This is like a labor of love. This is joy. This was like pure joy. I used to look forward to working with him. And then after 3 months, it was like he was nightmare free. And I kind of used a breathing technique that I kind of developed myself. It just like came to me via my intuition, and I used that. I used a lot of my own trauma, my professional training, and, you know, I kind of got him to face his fears. And I was like, my God, I could see myself being an online coach. And I decided to form my business. And I always wanted to form a consultancy business because I've got a lot of experience as a social worker, as, you know, working in diversity. And I kind of thought, let me kind of, you know, make it a coaching and a consultancy business. And then I was like, fell in love with the online coaching industry and kind of started, you know, looking at how I could develop my business. And meanwhile, I'd already hired this online coach to look at my own personal issues. She was like, yeah, I can like support you. I can, yeah, let's like look at this. And then this is January, and my husband by this time, 2018, it was all like, yeah, really supporting the fact that I've done this business. If this gives you joy, Tanya, it gives you joy. But he was getting really, you know, his patience was running out. He was like, what's happening? And you keep saying you can't live like this. Are we separating? What's happening? And he even, I remember we went for a mediation service in January, lovely people, volunteers. And I was like, adamant that this is what I wanted to be separated. I wanted this to happen, and he was like thinking he'd come for a mediation, and it was like, and he kind of went away. I could see how heartbroken he was. And then he even decided, and he's a traditional Asian man, he even decided to go for counseling. And I remember we went for the counseling session, a marital counseling session near our home. I was shocked because I thought, my God, this guy would, you know, before all these years, he never wanted to go. And now I'm kind of just wanting to leave the marriage. He wants to go to this. Okay, interesting. Okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt here. So I went and I spoke about my own past, and he was like, what? He was really shocked, like, to hear, because there were certain things that I hadn't ever really said about my own childhood and how traumatic it was, and he emotionally abusive it was. And he was like, really, he didn't really, I'd never really shared that with him. And then we kind of like came back, and the woman, I remember, she was lovely, but I could tell, she kind of really didn't have the time of day for him. She didn't say it, but I could tell, he could tell, I could tell. And he said, I'm not going back to that. I'm not going back to that. And I understand in a lot of therapeutics, caring spaces, really the talking therapy doesn't really work for a lot of men. It's not the thing for men. That's not how they are able to express themselves. And he's like one of them.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard this before. And even if the woman is being very professional, which she was, he saw her, unconsciously, the angst that she had towards him, and and she was a lot younger than us, and there were lots of issues. And my head was, my God, he's gone to counseling. This is weird. And then I still was adamant, like, I don't know, I just can't see us kind of being together still. And I remember, I think it was January, maybe it was February by this time. I remember this one afternoon, I remember it very distinctly. And I decided not to do anything. I decided not to do my writing. I decided not to do any housework. I was in my son's bed, bedroom. He was back at university. And I was like, I can't. All I know, I just need to take a nap. I don't know what I want right now. All I know is I just need to rest. I need to like go back into this darkness, let it comfort me, and just be back in this darkness, and just, I can't feel the light, but I'm okay. I'm not scared of this deep, dark pit that I'm in. I'm okay. And let me just be in this deep, dark grave. That's fine. I'm right down in the ground. And all I remember is I just connected to myself, my entire essence, my entire being, my entire everything. I could feel the wisdom and the strength and the energy and this deep, I don't even know the words, in my bones. And I went downstairs and I said to my husband, you can't break me, because I am unbreakable. And my husband looked at me like, who the hell is she talking to? And I realized I wasn't talking to him. I was talking to all the men in my life that, all the other women in my life that had tried to break me. I wasn't talking to him. And he then, argument, kind of like, what are you doing? You're being like this, and you're kind of trying to make me like this. And I'm not, the usual kind of argument that you have when a couple is separating. And he said, I can't put up this. I'm now going to tell the rest of your family, extended family, what's going on. I cannot put up with this anymore. I can't put up with you anymore. You cannot continue like this. And then he started speaking to people in my extended family, like my mum's best friend and a cousin, who were very instrumental when we were getting married in the wedding. And I was like, my God, I'm going to get gaslighted. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this. And he set up, bless him, he set up a mediation service, a family one, which wasn't really one. It was a meeting at my mum's best friend's house. And my mum wasn't there. My twin brother, my twin brother's wife, my younger brother, my younger brother's wife, my cousin, my cousin's wife, and him. His side, he was by himself, and I was there. And I just like let rip, and I was like, da, 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 and like, this is, and you did this A, B, and C, and then he did a little bit like, you did this. And then I remember going into that meeting, there was a prayer that we pray, Muslims pray. We're not sure about something, actually. And although in my head, I think I was sure I was going to get divorced, I actually did this prayer because it was like, if this is good for you, you pray, if this is good for you, God, make it easy for me. And if this decision is bad for me, then incline me away from it. Something
Mm.
similar to that. I'm not doing the Arabic any justice and the prayer any justice. And I remember praying this prayer, and I remember going into this meeting like adamant, I'm gonna, say, this is it, this is in front of everybody, this is how you treated me, and da da da. And like and he was like, what in the hell, why are you kind of being like this? And then there were certain things that he said that I realized was a way I had completely misunderstood him. There was a few things that he said, I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then there was like some cultural misunderstandings, because obviously I was brought up here, he was brought up in Karachi, some things to do with humor, and their humor is can be a little bit more cutting, but they don't necessarily, I like that. And then my sister-in-laws were saying, well, that's not like, that's not anything, that's no big deal. And I remember your brothers were like that towards me, that when I used to be like this, and then we kind of had a understanding that I wasn't meant, and then there were like loads of things that were kind of like ironed out. And all I remember was, I don't know, this is like this shift. My sight just shifted. I remember I still had this, what I've got like this dark heart of gold, because I love in a very different way. My heart was like closed. It didn't feel any love towards him. But I remember just looking at him, and I could see the love he had towards me. And I was like, Tanya, do you realize he's the only one from his side? Like, he doesn't have any family. He hasn't brought any family. He hasn't brought any friends. The rest they're all your side, right? And thank God everybody in the room was actually being quite very neutral. They weren't actually taking sides. They weren't taking my side. They weren't saying, oh, Tanya, oh my God, you're so wonderful, and my husband, they weren't doing that, thank God. And I just looked at him. I remember looking at him, just shifting. I just shifted my gaze, and I just realized it was like, forget this stupid paradigm that you've kind of obsessed with. He's not gaslighting you. This thing that you had, that you feared that you would gaslight, he's not this narcissist, he's not this evil man. And you are very sensitive and everything else, but life is not black and white, Tanya. And can you see how much he loves you, and he's still willing to fight for you? And he said in this meeting, and he's been saying it for the last 7 months, that he's very, very sorry. The thing that he hardly ever said in majority of your marriage, he refused to say. But he's a guy, and he loves you, and you need to like let go of your fears and give him a chance. And I basically said, you know what? And then people in the meeting were like, Tanya, can you just like forgive this? And I remember just in that split second saying, okay, I'm going to give you another chance, but I do not want to be treated A, B, and C. And these are all my witnesses, all these people in the room. If you ever treat me like this again, take me for granted, then these people, I'm going to come back to all these people and say that you did this again. And I am willing to give you a chance. And we went back together to our house. I didn't like go back, to sleeping with him straight away. I needed a week or so to kind of, and I was like, my God, what has happened? I didn't realize I was going to do this. But it made me raise my standards in my marriage to how I was treated, how he was treating me, how I treated him. And when he started treating me like a queen, I started treating him like a king. The joy that I found in my marriage, I didn't have in the 20 plus years that I've had. I respected me. He started to respect me. And since then, I'm not saying our marriage has been like always wonderful and ecstatic and, it's the second honeymoon period forever and ever. No, of course we have our arguments, but he never takes me for granted. Never ever has since February 2018. And I never ever take him for granted. And the conversations are a lot more deeper. We celebrated our 25th anniversary in October. And it's like in those 7 months, it's like I don't know if you're familiar with that Inanna myth. I feel like I kind of went down like the Inanna, she that goes down to the underworld, and then I came back up. That's how I feel. You know what happened to me? So that was the 7 months of my dark night of the soul, to answer your question.
Christ. So anyone listening who's under the illusion that a dark night of the soul is going to be one night, it's not. Like that's the moral of this story. Like if you feel like you're coming into a dark night of the soul, you need to buckle up. There's so much to dig into. I mean, I think I just want to honor you first and foremost first of all, thank you for sharing that story and for being so open. And I also really want to honor your courage, because it takes a lot to recognize when something isn't right for you in your life, and it's very, very difficult to choose better. And that sounds stupid, but it's very difficult to opt out of familiarity when that familiarity is something that's causing you pain. And I mean, there are so many tangents we could go off on in this episode, and I'm going to try not to go in too many directions, but I think there's a lot to be said for when we're in certain mind spaces, there's a lot to be said for the things that influence us. So like you said, that you very much got in your head about, the paradigm of narcissist versus empath. And I think it's very important to recognize the impact that those things can have on us when we are vulnerable like that. I think it's also very important to point out how, like you've just beautifully demonstrated, how it plays out. Two people getting married, marriage is this, this thing that's put up on a pedestal and it's glorified, and it's not everybody's aim, but for a lot of people it's their aim. I want to get married, I want my day, I want to be dressed up beautiful, and I want to have that gathering. And very few people focus on what a marriage actually is, which is actually two completely separate people coming together and trying to create a harmony. And it isn't just about navigating life, which can be an absolute shit show at the best of times, but it's also you're bringing with you every time you were hurt, every time you were disrespected, every time you felt pain, every time, and all the good stuff too. But it's almost like as we walk through life, we're carrying a backpack, and every time we experience something, it's like a stone is given to us and we put it in the backpack if it's a negative experience, right? And so when two people come together in a marriage, there's all of that stuff underneath the surface that you just wouldn't know. Like you would have no idea. And, I just think it's amazing that your husband got to hear you speak your truth about how it was for you growing up. And then he was like, oh, I had no idea, and it actually explains so much about behavior, and why we have to feel safe and why we need certain things. So I really just wanted to honor you for recognizing that. I really want to honor your husband for hanging on because to me, that's what you promised to do in a marriage. And I'm not saying for 1 minute that anybody should stay in an unhappy marriage. I'm divorced. I'm now in my second marriage. I absolutely know that sometimes it's not a good fit and it's not right for the mental health of the two people and it has to split. But, me and my husband now, like you say, marriage is it's not all roses. It's not going to be plain sailing all of the time. There are choppy waters to navigate. And I think it's a true testament to him and to you and to your union that you both stuck it out through all of the pain and all of the uncertainty, and how beautiful that your family actually did what they promised. So I don't know what it's like for marriage in your culture, but when we get married, we make promises to each other, but there's always a bit in the service where they throw it to, I was going to say throw it to the audience, you can tell I'm a performer, they throw it to the congregation.
Yeah.
They throw it to
Yeah.
the congregation and they say, now do you promise to support these people in their marriage? And everyone goes, yeah. And actually it doesn't happen nearly as much as it should. And how amazing, like I'm so lit up that you had that support. And you know, for anyone that's listening to this that's now thinking, holy shit, I don't want a dark night of the soul, I just want to like bring you to the other side of it now, because the fact of the matter is, you were always going to come back up. Like you described that as kind of going underground and coming back up. You were always going to come back up, with or without your marriage, with or without your husband, with or without any of the things that you thought you needed, because that's the point. It's a dark night of the soul. And I know we've joked about the fact that it's not one night, it could be months or even years for some people. But the point is, a period of nighttime is just that. It's a period of time, and the sun always rises again. And so whether your dark night of the soul is 24 hours or 24 months, or, you know, hopefully no longer than that, it's about recognizing that there's going to be light again. You are going to resurface again. And I think it can be very, very empowering to know that you're going to be held, you're going to be supported, and you're going to be okay, even if when you come back, things don't quite look the way that they did before. So I think that's important to say as well.
And, you know, like I remember feeling yes, I hired my online coach, you know, December, but there was several months where I was completely, you know, like trying to navigate this, what I would call a shitstorm by myself. And, you know, like, yes, I have a lot of very good friends, and, you know, I'm kind of in the caring profession, and, you know, lots of people were sympathetic, but I realized a lot of it, I needed to figure this out myself. And it literally felt like, you know, leaving Egypt, leaving Egypt and the comfort of, you know, the everyday and the crappy wages of, I don't know, the slaves, whatever, you know, and going into the wilderness. Literally, it just felt like that's what I had to do. I had to leave. Muslims will relate to this. I had to leave my Mecca and go into Medina. I had to leave what you know, all my physical. I remember there was times that I was sleeping on my mum's. Luckily, it was a very, very comfortable bed, and it was like, I'm so glad I've got a bed to sleep on, because I don't know tomorrow where I'm sleeping. Like, I literally don't know, because of how I felt the tension of in my own household. Do I sleep at my friends? Do I sleep at my mum's? And it literally was, I don't know if I'm gonna have a roof over my head. I really don't know what I'm doing. There was times I really didn't know what I'm doing, and it birthed my business. This business that I always wanted to set up and I never really got time to do. It birthed whether it came as an accident, a synchronicity, a coincidence, the fact that, you know, my business was birthed during this dark night of the soul is, you know, and then like a year later, I'm like hosting my own online summit. 2017, I witnessed as a customer an online summit, and then 2018 December, I'm hosting my own online summit with top coaches. I mean, I would never have thought when I was going through my dark night of soul that I would be this transformational coach and this, you know, advisor to other thought leaders and millionaire coaches. You know, that's
this
how
is what I love.
Who hire me now.
Yeah,
those are the people that hire me.
This is what I love. This is exactly what I love, for two reasons. First of all, when you're in a dark place, when you're in a period of struggle, it feels endless. It feels like you've got there and you're never getting out. And you're beautifully illustrating that just isn't the case. I also think that, you know, you said, oh, I don't know if this business was birthed because of, you know, it was coincidence or synchronicity. I fully believe that magic happens when we align to our own truth. And in other words, when we finally decide what we will and won't stand for, when we finally decide that we're worth it, like in the face of anything trying to tell us that that's not true. This is what I love about your story, because you could list, I'm sure, 25 bajillion reasons why you wouldn't be worthy of that, right? Why you wouldn't be worthy of that success, of that happiness, and of any of that. And yet you knew in your soul that you were worthy of it, even if it didn't look that way on the surface. And the beautiful thing is, you didn't know how that would then transpire. You know, you didn't put yourself in your hole and go, oh, when I come out of this, I'm going to have a coaching business. You were just like, wait, this isn't it. Like, I don't know what this is, but this is not it. You know, I'm worth more. I'm available for more. And that beautiful prayer that you shared as well. And I do want to go into this tangent a little bit, but that beautiful prayer that you shared about, if this is meant for me, make it easy. Like, I just think that brings me to tears, because it's so beautiful. And I think this is such an amazing conversation. I think any Muslims listening are going to be so touched by your story. I'm sure they're going to find synchronicities in it, and others as well, to be fair. Like, anybody that's ever been in any relationship, whether that's a romantic relationship or a career, you know, there are plenty of people in toxic jobs right now with toxic bosses, and you know, you can choose more, whether that's romantic or career or health or whatever it may be. So I think your story is going to resonate with so many people, but I feel that we have a real opportunity right now to really give you a voice as a Muslim, to really illustrate the beauty of that religion and of what you all stand for. So I want to give that a platform.
Thank you, Lilli, for that. And I'm now going to kind of say that for me, it's being a Muslim is beyond just this is not evangelizing or anything. It's about somebody that submits to the truth. And you could be a Christian and be that.
Yes.
You could be an atheist and be that, actually.
Yes.
As long as you submit and surrender and you have value for the truth, you know, that is what a true human being is. Aside from you know, how those rituals look like, or whether you go to church or mosque or synagogue or wherever you do, I don't think it really matters, because I was looking for the truth. I was searching most of my life. I searched for the truth. And you know, it wasn't the easiest journeys, and I really wouldn't want. That's why I do what I do, because I want people not to have that transformation in 7 months. I want, you know, for them to have it, you know.
An actual night, one night, one coaching session. Oh, I think it's amazing. You know, when I'm doing these interviews, I'm always listening to what my guests are saying, because I know at some point I'm going to come to write the show notes for this episode, and I'm going to come up with a title for the episode. And it always feels like it's difficult at first, and then it always comes through as some divine download. And what I just heard then when you were speaking was seek your truth. So that is going to be the title of this episode.
Seek the truth, because there is the truth. Yeah. It's not my truth or your truth. It's seek the truth.
Yeah. And
when you seek the truth, it will always find you. It will always be there for you.
100%. And I love that you've highlighted that, because that's how I see it as well. I believe, you know, I was raised as a Christian, and for a long time that was my like blueprint, right? I didn't even know to look outside of that. And then of course you do religious studies at school and you start to learn about these other religions, but there was very much this idea of, you know, like almost like teams, like we're the Christians and so this is the way, and God bless the other people who've got their ways, like we don't really think that they're right, but you know, love them anyway. And as I got older, I started to think, but I genuinely can't see the difference. And that might like be quite triggering to hear for some people, a bit like when somebody says I don't see color. And I don't mean that there aren't differences, there absolutely are, of course, but what I mean is at the core of what we're all reaching for and at the core of what we believe, it's the truth, like you just said. It's about
Exactly.
recognizing that you're being guided, whether you call that guidance God or Allah or the universe or angels or Trixie, it doesn't matter. Like, it's having that faith. And I think, you know, I talk about faith a lot, and I always feel like I have to caveat that by saying this isn't a religious thing. I'm not saying you've got to believe in a bearded man in the sky.
That's why some of my best friends are atheists. Some of my best friends are atheists, but they're still seekers of the truth. They still seek the truth. Some of my best friends are rabbis. Some of my best friends are pastors. And so it's like, you know, that diversity of faith or of no faith is so damn important. Otherwise, this world will be pretty boring.
Totally. I just want to touch as well, because you've mentioned how you now help people. So, and I said that I wanted to get to the other side of the dark night. So just for anyone that's hanging on going, please tell me that there's a happy ending to this story. I mean, I think you already can tell that there's a happy ending to this story, but how has that experience now impacted you? What is it that you are now able to do for others as a result of what you went through yourself?
So that particular 7 months of hell led to heaven. And then it led, as I said, to the founding of my business. And it also led me to find a very powerful tool called shadow alchemy. That was back in a year ago. No, is it a year ago? July 2019, I found a very inspirational coach. She's a thought leader called Lorna Johnson. And I mean, as you know, I'm trauma trained. I'm a psychodynamic counselor. I've studied Jung. And when I found out, I actually realized kind of what I actually went through in my 7 months. And basically, shadow alchemy is it's Jung's ideas, and Carolyn Miss, who's another Jungian analysis, her ideas really very simplified, and for me, I would say spiritualized. And is, you know, we all have energy patterns within our psyche called archetypes that run the show. And then there's, you know, they run the show for the whole human species actually. But majority of people are totally unconscious that is the case. Right. And there are 4, this is what I teach. I developed shadow alchemy into what I call Muslim alchemy. And again, the people that are interested in this are usually actually, interestingly enough, not Muslims. And this is what I teach, and I teach the 4 main shadow archetypes, which are survival archetypes, which are fear-based archetypes that keep you afraid, like I was, that keep you afraid. And they are the prostitute, the child, the victim, and the saboteur. And what you do is when you learn to identify who these archetypes are with truth rants, you know, by standing in your truth, standing for the truth, standing by the truth, you alchemize them into the light archetypes, which are the lover, the sovereign, the warrior, and the magician. And this is what I teach to my clients. And it's led to my private coaching clients having the last person I worked with, again, this is not her real name. I never give real names out. This is a false name. I will call her Liz. She started working with me in my mastermind in July 2020. Her coaching business was offline, was decimated because of COVID. She was having 0 revenue come in. I just taught her about the shadow and the light archetypes, and she generated $45,000 into her business.
I mean, this is the power of this work, right? And I really just want to take a pause, because I think we so often now we've become a little bit immune, I think, to when we hear numbers, because so many people have used that as marketing in the online space. So you can't scroll Facebook or Instagram without seeing somebody going, oh, do this thing and you'll get 10 grand, or do this thing and you'll be a millionaire, or whatever. And I think like we become a bit immune to it, but it's truly powerful. That energetic work, that deep work, if you can find a mentor that can guide you through that, it will have that impact. And it's not about the money, but the truth is money is the physical, it's the physical energy, right? It's energy, but we can hold it in our hands, and it's how we exchange value.
Money is energy in 3D.
Yeah,
money
exactly.
is energy in 3D.
That's a better way of saying it. And it's about an exchange, and it's just that simple. And oh God, we could go into a whole other conversation, but I've had a few conversations on this podcast recently about money, and it keeps coming back. And I think it is important because so many people are they're prisoners of their own money story. They're prisoners of their own lack of understanding around what it really means to have money. And there's so much false idea about what it means if you've made money, or what it means if you're taking money from others, right?
Yes.
Like you said, when you found that mentor that's given you so much, and yet when she gave you her price, your reaction was, holy shit, that's a lot of money. And then all your friends were like, holy shit, that's a lot of money. And then we say to ourselves, oh, I shouldn't have that, I mustn't do that, it's not worth it. And it obviously, people must do their due diligence, right? Don't just go flinging your money at anyone you find on the internet. There are going to be people who unfortunately want to take advantage of somebody if they're in a vulnerable state. Definitely. But actually, I think that those are few and far between. I think you can, again, it comes back to trusting yourself. Trust yourself to know, like your conscious reaction was, shit, that's a lot of money. But your soul was like, go do it. I did the same thing when we're both B schoolers, right? I did the same thing when I signed up for B school. Consciously, I was like, holy fuck, how am I going to find $2,000? Like, I can't find $2,000. But something inside me was like, this is something for you to do. And there's an important distinction as well, because there's definitely been times when I've purchased a program or some coaching or something from an energetic belief that on my own I can't do it, and that on my own I'm not enough. And you made a brilliant point earlier that you can have the friends and the mentors and everything around you, but actually at times you're going to stand on your own. And that might sound frightening to people, but don't let it frighten you, because you have been given everything you need to come through everything that's coming for you. And I think this last 12 months that we've just gone through has underlined that, because people haven't had the capacity to be there for each other. So many people I've seen going, oh, nobody's reaching out to me, nobody's asking if I'm okay. No, because they're not okay, right? They haven't got the mental capacity to even think about that. And I'm someone, like, I came into this, this pandemic with a lot of self-development under my belt, with a very strong spiritual faith, and I struggled. And I found that I couldn't, I would then go, oh shit, I haven't even texted my friends for weeks, because it's not even been on my radar, because I've just been trying to get up and put one foot in front of the other. And so it's important to recognize that, of course, we're not supposed to do it on our own all of the time. And so we do have these beautiful connections, and we have this is why I love this podcast, because I get to introduce amazing people like you to all the amazing people that are listening. And anybody listening, your soul already knows if this is for you. You can already feel it. You will have a list of reasons why it might not be a good idea, but that is not coming from your soul. That's coming from your fear. Tune into what you know in your heart. And when I signed up for B school, so I actually, I prayed a prayer, because it had got to the last week where they were closing the doors on the Friday, say. And it was on the Monday, and I was like, oh, I really want to do this, but I don't know if I should, because in all honesty, I'd managed to score some part payments, but in all honesty, one part payment was all the money I had. So I was literally thinking, do I feed my children, or do I do this course? And it was like, I'm going to be a terrible person if I put the course ahead. It's 11:11, which is a significant number if you're into angel numbers, by the way. And I was like, so I wrestled with it, and it got to the Wednesday, and I went to bed, and I was like, look, do you know what? Just give me a sign if I'm supposed to be in, a bit like the prayer you mentioned. I mean, I didn't do it in Arabic, and it definitely wasn't as beautiful, but I basically said, if this is supposed to happen for me, let me wake up and be absolutely certain that that's what I'm supposed to do, even if I can't see how, even if I can't see if it's a great idea. And I woke up the next day and there was nothing. I was like, no, I still have no idea. But then I woke up on the Friday and I literally opened my eyes and I went, I'm doing B school. It was literally like, we're doing it. And I went to my favorite coffee shop and I put in my number and I paid all the money out of my account that I had on that first installment. And as I did it, something lit up in my body. And I was like, I've just made a really important decision for myself. And I trust that I'm going to be held. I trust that this is going to work out. And I've told this story before, but I literally went to check my bank afterwards to be like, let's just see how bad this really is. And almost the same amount of money was still in the account. And I was like, oh shit, did that not work then? I'm sure it said it was authorized, but the money's still there. And then I was like, well, maybe it hasn't gone out straight away. Looked at the list and I was like, no, they've had the money. So how is the money still there? And then when I checked my emails, a client, so this would have been February or March. I think it must have been February because that's when B School runs, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this was February. I'd been booked to sing at a wedding the following September. And for some unknown reason, that couple in that moment decided, oh, we're just going to pay you. That never, ever, ever happens. You get, as a singer, you might take a deposit, but you always get paid on the night. It was always in my contracts. I always said, if you want to shoot me 50 quid, you can, but it's cash on the night. And for some ungodly reason.
That is such a weird story, but it's a very similar to story what happened to me recently. Yeah. So I've never had this happen. This is like, for coaches that are listening or people that want to be coaches, you're probably going to think this couldn't have happened, but it happened. So I hired a business coach in August of 2020.
Yeah.
And just before I hired him, or was it before? Yeah, no, yeah, it was afterwards. After I hired him, one of my clients, it was before I hired him, one of my clients came on to me. She just actually finished working with me, and she came on and she said, I want you to, like, I want to do this stuff that you're doing, this Muslim Alchemy stuff. I want you to teach me it. I'm ready. I wasn't ready before, but I'm ready now. I want one of your most intensive, containers. And I'm like, she had stopped working with me and she was begging me to like sell her this program, which I hadn't even was working on it. I hadn't even got. It was the most weirdest clarity call ever. And she paid me. And then I hired my business coach, which was like the most weirdest thing.
Yeah.
It was the most.
This is the thing, right? And people struggle to really believe this. And I'd actually, before B School, I'd fallen into the same rabbit hole as you. And actually, our stories are very synchronistic in terms of timing. I keep saying this, but I actually believe there was a mass awakening in 2018. So many people suddenly, like, it's almost like they just stopped what they were doing and was like, wait, there's something more for me and I'm going to go after it no matter what the cost, right? So our stories are very synchronistic, but I'd fallen into the same rabbit hole as you in the online space and be like, oh my God, online coaching, oh my God, mindset work, oh my God, like I want to learn all this stuff. And I kept hearing people talk about, oh, I made a decision to hire this coach or do this program and magically the money appeared. And every time I'd hear that, I'd be like, bullshit. Like, there's no way there's no way that happens. All right, I magically want a Porsche. Where's my Porsche, right? I don't know why I say Porsche, because I really wouldn't like a Porsche, but it's always the example that I use. But, so I was always like, bullshit, whatever. And this is the thing, I think, when it comes to energy work, lots of people talk about manifestation. And I think the mistake that I've made in the past, and I'm sure if I made it, then others have made it too, It's the mistake of believing that manifestation is something that you have to do. Like manifestation is something you have to go and get. And actually, it's not. It's just about recognizing what you want, knowing you can have it, clearing any thoughts or beliefs that are telling you otherwise in the moment. So that isn't, again, it's a bit like the dark night of the soul. It's not something you're going to do one time in your journal and then you're done. It's like you're going to do that shit for your whole life. Like every time you think something like, oh, I can't do that, or that's not possible, you shift the energy around it, and it truly, truly works. There's a check sat on my desk right now that came. I've just finished doing this 30 days of wealth consciousness, which just had phenomenal results. And it was really just a personal experiment that I did for shits and giggles. I just thought, I wonder what would change in 30 days if I just threw everything at it. And this check arrived out of nowhere from an energy supplier that I haven't used for 10 years. And all of a sudden they were like, oh, when you closed your account, we owed you all this money and we're just now deciding to tell you and let you have it back. I was like, what? Like, it really does happen. And I think, you know, it's not magic. It's just, we are all energetic beings. Everything is energy, and money is energy too. And I think what I'm learning is it's this constant stream. It's this constant flow that's always available.
It is magic. It's you being in your magician. It's when you stop listening to your saboteur, your mind that, you know, wants everything in, you know, like order, and, you know, it's you being in your magician, you knowing it is magic.
Yeah.
It is magic.
I love it. I'm glad you said that, because I am actually someone who, I just love to believe in magic. I've got a band on my wrist that says expect miracles, which I think it's just another way of expressing that in any moment something magical can happen. You know, it doesn't matter how dark your dark night of the soul might feel. It's, you know, expect those miracles. Start, you know, I think we're kind of conditioned to expect it all to go wrong, aren't we? You know, especially people that struggle with anxiety like me. It's, you know, and I always thought I was a positive person, but I realized that my default setting is if I get anything good, I kind of just expect it's all going to go to shit at some point. And I think that's just because we watch films and we read books and we watch soap operas where that happens. You know, somebody's happy and they're about to get married and then suddenly the church blows up and everybody dies. And like, that's constantly being fed into our subconscious. So we expect it all to go wrong. And I love this reminder on my wrist that no, expect miracles too. Because actually both are always available, and it's your choice what you decide to look at. And, you know, your story that you told, yes, it was a horrible time and you called it 7 months of hell. But even in your story, you highlighted those moments where you were like, oh my God, I get to have a bubble bath. Oh my God, I can choose how to spend my evening.
There were many moments of me. I remember there was this one that I feel like I met my future self. It was just the most weirdest of, I'm walking to where I was staying with my friend's house and walking there. And I remember just meeting my future self, and my future self saying to me, you know, you're going through hell right now. It's not going to be the way forever. You know, I'm going to tell you, you're going to come out of this. Where I am right now is a really brilliant place, you know, and it was the most disconcerting experience meeting your future self. And I could see her, I met her, and she was trying to comfort me. And I think that kind of helped me through the dark night.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What a beautiful way to finish this conversation. Thank you so much. I've loved it. Just for anybody listening, Taniya's very kindly offering a free breakthrough session with her. So, and you were very clear when we were talking about this off air at the beginning that it's not so much coaching. In fact, you can call it any label you like, but you just said, I will bring people back to where they need to be, basically. So anybody listening who feels like they're maybe having a dark night of the soul, maybe you're in a dark night of the soul, maybe you're just terrified that you might have a dark night of the soul, whatever, it's a free session. You can sit down with Taniya. you can tell her your situation, and she can explain more to you about the way that she works, and hopefully give you some tips and some strategies to move forward from there. So Taniya, thank you so much for offering that. We'll put all the links in the show notes. And I am actually going to go back through the episode and make sure that we link to all of those wonderful references you gave as well, because you mentioned some great people there too. So everybody listening, I hope that you loved this episode. As ever, you can let me know what you thought. If you click the links in the show notes, you can email me, you can send me a voice note. And guess what? You guys have actually been doing that. And I told you it made my day when you guys email me. When I hear your voice, it literally makes my day. So please send more of those, because that's a dollop of joy right there for me when I open my email and somebody's left me a little love message. So you can use that voice note for anything you like. If you just want to tell me what you thought, if you've got questions for Taniya or for me, you can do that as well. And obviously I'm going to be live as well this Thursday, so you can join me then as well. I'll be on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and you can come and join me there and ask your questions. So Taniya, thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you.
And to everyone listening, remember, confidence is yours as soon as you choose it. I'll be back again very, very soon, but in the meantime, look after yourselves and have a good week. Lots of love. You've been listening to Lilli Badcock on the Confidence Academy podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Please show me some love by subscribing to the show and giving it a rate and review on iTunes. And make sure you never miss another episode by joining my mailing list. You'll receive daily channel guidance from my soul to yours, as well as a heads up about all of the exciting things that go on over here in Lilyland. You can join the mailing list by clicking the link in the show notes or visit lillybadcock.com for all of the information. Also in the show notes are all of the links to the resources that we mentioned in today's episode, so do go and check those out when you get a moment. Don't forget to come and join me over in the Confidence Academy Facebook group, where you can post your questions and comments for me and my incredible guests. And of course, if you know anyone who needs this show in their life, please feel free to share this episode with them. Thank you again for being here. See you again soon. Mwah.